A frigid night in Lynchburg, and whispers haunt Desmond Doss. The war hero branded a fool. He's aiding thieves, the town hisses, scorning the old man's secret treks to the shadowed tracks. Yet Desmond, scarred by battles, limps on, his bag heavy with hope for the forgotten. Beneath the overpass, a boy lies bleeding. A fire sparks in the dark, and danger closes in. What Desmond does next will shatter the town's judgment and rewrite his legend. One choice, one night, one truth that changes everything forever. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The sun dips low over Lynchburg, Virginia, painting the sky in hues of gold and amber. In a small, weathered house on Maple Street, Desmond Doss, now 78, tends to his garden with quiet care. His hands, rough from years of war and work, cradle a tomato plant as if it's a fragile life. Once, he was a hero, a medic in World War II who saved 75 men at Hacksaw Ridge without firing a shot. That was 1945, a lifetime ago, when courage meant running into gunfire with nothing but faith. Now, in 1997, Desmond's world is simpler, but his heart still beats for others. His home is modest, a single-story clapboard with a creaking porch and a well-worn Bible on the kitchen table. The townsfolk know him as the quiet man who limps from old war wounds, his left leg stiff from shrapnel scars. Yet, his eyes still carry that spark of unshakable belief. Lynchburg is a sleepy town, its streets lined with oak trees and white picket fences. But beyond the tidy homes lies a forgotten corner near the railroad tracks, where shadows cling to broken dreams. Here, the homeless and wayward teens gather, a place the locals call the shame of the town. Desmond knows this place well, though he never speaks of it. Under the cover of night, he slips out with a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. Inside are sandwiches, old coats, and blankets, small offerings for those who have nothing. He moves slowly, his joints aching with every step, but his mission is clear. The bag of medical supplies he carries, a habit from his army days, rattles softly against his side. To Desmond, helping is as natural as breathing, a vow he made long ago to his God and himself. The railroad tracks gleam faintly under the streetlights, leading to a cluster of makeshift shelters. Cardboard boxes and tarps form a patchwork village beneath the overpass. Most folks in Lynchburg avoid this place, whispering about crime and despair, but Desmond sees only people in need. He sets his gifts down carefully, a loaf of bread here, a wool blanket there, always in spots where they'll be found, but he won't be seen. His faith, rooted in the Seventh-day Adventist creed, guides him to give without seeking praise. To him, kindness doesn't need a spotlight, but whispers have started to spread through the town. At the diner, over coffee and pie, folks talk about the strange old man sneaking around the tracks at night. They don't know it's Desmond, only that someone's been leaving things for those people. Mrs. Carter, who runs the church choir, clucks her tongue at the news. Whoever's doing it is just encouraging trouble, she says, stirring her tea. Those vagrants don't need handouts. They need to move on. Her friend, Mr. Thompson, nods, his voice gruff, probably stirring up crime, leaving food out like that. Next thing you know, we'll have more of them coming here. The rumors grow, painting Desmond's quiet acts as reckless, even dangerous. At the barber shop, old men swap theories about the fool who's feeding criminals. No one suspects the limping veteran who smiles politely at Sunday service. Desmond hears the talk but keeps his head down. He's no stranger to being misunderstood back in the war. They called him a coward for refusing a rifle. He knows truth has a way of rising, like dawn after a long night. Each evening, as the town settles into sleep, Desmond pulls on his faded jacket and grabs his bag. The pain in his knees flares, a reminder of battles fought decades ago. But he pushes forward, driven by a promise to help where he can. The overpass looms ahead, its concrete pillars casting long shadows. Beneath it, the air smells of damp earth and rust. Desmond scans the darkness, his eyes sharp despite his age, searching for signs of life. Tonight, something feels different. A faint cough echoes from a rusted train car, abandoned by the tracks. Desmond pauses, his hand tightening on the strap of his bag. Listening, he steps closer, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The beam lands on a figure curled up inside the car, a boy, no older than 16. His clothes torn and face pale. Blood stains the ground beneath him, pooling from a gash on his leg. Desmond's heart races, memories of wounded soldiers flashing through his mind. He kneels, ignoring the stab of pain in his joints. "Son, can you hear me? You're gonna be all right." The boy, Jamal, stirs weakly, his eyes fluttering open. He's scared, shivering in the cold. But Desmond Doss is no stranger to saving lives in the dark. He opens his medical bag, pulling out gauze and antiseptic, his hands steady despite the years. The skills he honed on the battlefield come back like muscle memory. He works quickly, binding Jamal's wound to stop the bleeding. Jamal mumbles, his voice faint. "Who? Who are you?" Desmond doesn't answer, focused on the task. "Stay with me, son. We're getting you out of here." The night is heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hum of a passing car. Desmond knows he can't leave Jamal here, not with the wound festering and the cold seeping in. He makes a choice, one that will change everything. With effort, he helps Jamal to his feet, supporting the boy's weight on his frail frame. The walk back to his house is slow, each step a test of his strength. But Desmond's will is stronger than his body, forged in the fires of war. They reach his porch just as the first flakes of snow begin to fall. Desmond eases Jamal onto a chair in his small living room, the warmth of the house a stark contrast to the chill outside. He grabs a blanket and wraps it around the boy. Jamal's eyes dart around, wary and confused. "Why you helping me? You don't even know me." Desmond smiles softly, his voice calm. "Don't need to know you need help." He boils water for tea and calls Dr. Ellis, a friend from church who makes house calls. The doctor arrives quietly, no questions asked, and confirms Jamal's wound needs stitches, but he'll pull through. Desmond nods, relieved, but knows the real challenge is just beginning. Outside, the snow falls heavier, blanketing the town in quiet. But across Lynchburg, the whispers grow louder. A neighbor, peering through her curtains, sees Desmond bring a ragged boy into his home and picks up her phone. By morning, the gossip spreads like wildfire. At the church, Mrs. Carter shakes her head, her voice sharp. Desmond Doss, of all people, taking in some delinquent, he's lost his mind. Mr. Thompson chimes in, his tone bitter. "He's a war hero, sure, but this is foolish. That boy's probably trouble, and Desmond's just asking for it." The pastor, Reverend Hayes, tries to calm them. "Let's not judge too quickly. Desmond's always had a good heart," but his words do little to quell the growing unease. Desmond, unaware of the storm brewing, sits by Jamal as the boy sleeps. He reads from his Bible, the same one that carried him through Hacksaw Ridge. In its pages, he finds the strength to keep going, even when the world doesn't understand. The town's judgment weighs heavy, but Desmond's faith is heavier still. He knows the truth will come out, just as it did all those years ago. For now, he focuses on the boy in his care, a life he's determined to save, no matter what anyone says. The snow falls steadily outside Desmond Doss's small house in Lynchburg, Virginia, blanketing the town in a quiet hush. Inside, Jamal sleeps fitfully on a cot in the living room, wrapped in one of Desmond's old quilts. Desmond sits nearby, his Bible open, his eyes heavy but watchful. Morning light creeps through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. Jamal stirs, his face etched with pain and suspicion, unsure of this old man who pulled him from the cold. "Why'd you bring me here?" he mumbles, his voice rough. Desmond sets his Bible down, his smile gentle but firm. "Couldn't leave you bleeding out there, son." That's not who I am. Jamal is 16, a black teenager with a life carved by hardship. His mother's addiction tore his family apart, leaving him to fend for himself under the railroad tracks. He survived by stealing food and running with a rough crowd, trusting no one. His eyes dart to the door, calculating an escape, but his bandaged leg keeps him still. Desmond notices but doesn't push, offering a plate of toast and eggs instead. "Eat up," he says. "You'll need your strength." The town, meanwhile, buzzes with gossip as the snow melts into slush. Mrs. Carter, sipping coffee at the diner, spreads the word about Desmond's strange guest. "He's got some kid in his house now," she says, her voice sharp. "Probably one of those troublemakers from the tracks. Mr. Thompson, wiping grease from his hands at the auto shop, scoffs. Desmond's a fool. Taking in strays like that. He's going to get himself robbed or worse." The rumors swirl faster than the winter wind, painting Desmond as reckless, even dangerous. At the grocery store, whispers follow him as he buys extra bread and canned soup. He hears them but keeps his head high, his limp more pronounced in the cold. Jamal, now awake, watches Desmond move about the kitchen with slow, deliberate steps. "You're old," he says bluntly. "Why risk your neck for me?" Desmond chuckles, stirring a pot of soup. "Back in the war, I carried men twice my size off a cliff under fire." "You're not so heavy, son." He tells Jamal about Hacksaw Ridge, about saving 75 soldiers without a gun, guided only by faith. Jamal listens, his guard lowering just a fraction, but his eyes still flicker with doubt. "Sounds like a movie," he mutters. Outside, the neighborhood grows restless. Mrs. Larson, Desmond's next-door neighbor, calls the sheriff's office, her voice trembling. "I saw that boy go into Mr. Doss's house last night. He looked like bad news." Sheriff Daniels, a gruff man who respects Desmond's war record, sighs as he takes the call. "We'll check it out, ma'am, but let's not jump to conclusions." Still, he knows the town's mood is turning sour. By noon, the church council calls an emergency meeting at the Seventh-day Adventist Chapel. Reverend Hayes, a kind but weary man, tries to keep order. "Desmond's always been a good soul," he says, "but we need to know what he's doing with this boy." Mrs. Carter stands, her hands on her hips. "It's irresponsible. He's putting our community at risk, harboring some delinquent." The room murmurs in agreement, fear outweighing faith. Desmond, unaware of the meeting, focuses on Jamal, who's now sitting up, sipping soup. The boy's clothes are tattered, his sneakers held together with duct tape. Desmond digs through a closet, pulling out an old jacket and a pair of boots. "Here," he says, handing them to Jamal. "They're not much, but they'll keep you warm." Jamal takes them hesitantly, his fingers tracing the worn leather, unsure of this unexpected kindness. That afternoon, Sheriff Daniels knocks on Desmond's door, his deputy trailing behind. "Morning, Desmond," he says, his tone polite but firm. "We got a call about a young man staying with you." Desmond invites them in, his face calm despite the intrusion. Jamal tenses, ready to bolt, but Desmond's steady hand on his shoulder keeps him still. "This is Jamal," Desmond says. "He was hurt, and I'm helping him get back on his feet." The sheriff glances at Jamal's bandaged leg, then at Desmond's medical kit on the table. "Folks are worried. Desmond, they're saying you're taking in trouble." "Trouble don't always stay trouble," Desmond replies, his voice even. "Sometimes it just needs a chance." The sheriff nods, unconvinced but unwilling to argue with a war hero. After they leave, Jamal stares at Desmond, his voice low. "Why didn't you tell him I'm nobody? They're going to keep coming after you." Desmond sits across from him, his eyes kind but piercing. "You're not nobody, Jamal. Nobody is." That evening, Desmond calls the local youth center, speaking quietly with Ms. Harper, a social worker he's known for years. Got a boy here who needs a safe place. He says, "Can you help, Ms.?" Harper promises to visit tomorrow, but warns him, "People are talking. Desmond. They think you're stirring up problems by helping those kids at the tracks." Desmond shrugs, unfazed. "Let him talk. I've heard worse." He hangs up, his thoughts drifting back to the war, to men who called him weak until he proved them wrong. Jamal, meanwhile, begins to open up, his voice halting as he talks about his mother. "She used to be great. You know, then the drugs took her, and I didn't have nowhere to go." Desmond listens, his heart heavy but resolute. "You're here now," he says. "That's a start." He hands Jamal a glass of water, his movements slow but sure. The next day, the gossip reaches a fever pitch. At the church, Mrs. Carter organizes a petition to protect the community from Desmond's reckless charity. "He's a hero, sure," she says, "but heroes can make mistakes." Reverend Hayes tries to defend Desmond, but the council is divided. "We'll ask him to explain himself Sunday," he says, hoping to buy time. The air feels thick with judgment, a stark contrast to Desmond's quiet faith. Back at the house, Desmond shows Jamal how to clean his wound, his hands steady as he demonstrates. "Keep it clean, and it'll heal right," he says. Jamal watches, mimicking the motions, a flicker of trust growing. Outside, a neighbor snaps a photo of Desmond's house, posting it online with a caption, "War hero or fool?" "Why's he hiding a criminal?" the post spreads, fueling the town's unease. Desmond, oblivious to the digital storm, sits with Jamal, sharing stories of the war. "I didn't fight to hurt anyone," he says. "I fought to save them, just like I'm trying to save you." Jamal's eyes soften, but he's still guarded. Nobody's ever cared before. "Why you?" Desmond leans back, his voice warm. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone." "Son." The town's whispers grow louder, a chorus of doubt and fear. At the diner, Mr. Thompson shakes his head. "Desmond's lost it, taking in a kid like that. He's gonna regret it." But Desmond, in his small house, keeps his focus on Jamal. He sees not a delinquent, but a boy who's lost his way, just like the soldiers he once carried to safety. He knows the path ahead won't be easy, but he's ready to face it, just as he faced the cliffs of Hacksaw Ridge. The morning sun filters through Desmond Doss's kitchen window in Lynchburg, Virginia, warming the worn linoleum floor. Jamal sits at the table, his legs still bandaged but healing, picking at a plate of pancakes Desmond made. The old man hums a hymn softly, his hands busy washing dishes, a quiet peace settling between them. Jamal's been with Desmond for a week now, his wariness fading under the weight of steady kindness. Last night, he opened up, his voice low, about a dream he'd buried long ago. "Always wanted to fix cars," he said, "but life don't give you chances when you're running from it." Desmond listened, nodding, then pulled a dusty toolbox from the garage. "These were mine," he said, handing Jamal a set of wrenches and screwdrivers, their handles worn smooth. "Start small, son, fix something, and you'll fix yourself." Jamal's fingers trace the tools, his eyes wide with something like hope. He spends the morning in Desmond's yard, tinkering with an old bicycle, its chain rusty but salvageable. For the first time in years, he feels like he's building, not breaking. Outside, though, the town's whispers grow sharper, cutting through the crisp January air. Mrs. Carter, at the church knitting circle, clucks her tongue. Desmond's got that boy working in his yard now, bold as day. Her friend, Mrs. Larson, leans in, her voice low. "I called the sheriff again yesterday. They need to know he's sheltering a thief." The sheriff's office sends Deputy Carter this time, a young officer who knows Desmond's war stories from his grandfather. He finds Jamal in the yard, grease on his hands, the bicycle half repaired. Desmond stands nearby, leaning on his cane, his face calm but tired. Folks are concerned. "Mr. Doss, the deputy says, his tone apologetic. They say this boy's got a record petty theft. Fights. Desmond meets his gaze. He's got a future too, if we let him have one. Jamal freezes, expecting handcuffs, but the deputy only sighs. Just keep him out of trouble. Desmond, he says, tipping his hat before leaving. Jamal mutters, they'll never trust me, but Desmond just hands him a wrench. Keep working, son. The town's suspicion festers, spreading through phone calls and church pews. At the hardware store, Mr. Thompson shakes his head. Desmond's a hero, but he's blind. That kid's gonna burn him. Reverend Hayes, preparing his Sunday sermon, feels the weight of the community's unrest. He visits Desmond, his voice gentle but firm. People want answers. Desmond, they're scared you're bringing danger to our streets. Desmond pours the pastor a cup of coffee, his hands steady. I'm not hiding nothing. Reverend, just trying to give a boy a chance, like I gave those soldiers at Hacksaw Ridge. The pastor leaves, unconvinced but moved by Desmond's quiet resolve. Back at the church, Mrs. Carter's petition gains signatures, demanding Desmond stop endangering the town. The air feels heavy with judgment, a storm waiting to break. Jamal, meanwhile, grows stronger, his limp fading as his wound heals. He talks more now, sharing bits of his past, his mother's laughter before the drugs, his father's absence. Desmond listens, offering no judgment, only stories of men he saved and the faith that carried him through. One afternoon, Desmond finds an old radio in the attic, its wires frayed. Fix this, he says, setting it on the table. Jamal dives in, his fingers nimble, a spark of pride lighting his face when it crackles to life. That evening, Desmond sits with Jamal, the radio playing soft gospel tunes. You've got a gift, son, he says. Don't let the world take it from you. Jamal looks down, his voice barely audible. Nobody ever believed in me before. Why you so sure? Desmond smiles, his eyes distant. Because I've seen broken men come back stronger, and you're no different. The town's unrest peaks when a new rumor spreads Desmond's been seen at the tracks again, leaving blankets in the snow. Mrs. Larson posts online, her words sharp. He's feeding criminals while we sleep. When will it stop? Desmond ignores the noise, his focus on Jamal and the calls he's making to Ms. Harper at the youth center. He needs a trade program, he tells her. Something to keep his hands busy and his heart full. Miss Harper agrees to meet Jamal soon, but her voice carries a warning. The town's turning against you. Desmond, be careful, they're watching every move. Desmond hangs up, his jaw tight, but his resolve unshaken. He's faced worse than gossip bullets, bombs, and men who called him coward. This, he knows, is just another battle for what's right. That night, the air turns bitter, the coldest of the winter so far. Under the railroad overpass, a group of homeless men huddle around a makeshift fire, its flames fed by scraps of wood, a faulty lo suoi, cobbled together from a metal drum, sparks dangerously in the wind. Desmond, out on his nightly rounds, smells smoke before he sees it. His flashlight catches the orange glow, flickering wildly beneath the overpass. His heart pounds, memories of war's chaos flooding back, but he moves toward the danger. Anyone in there, he calls, his voice hoarse but steady. A man stumbles out, coughing, his face smudged with soot. 3 more inside. He gasps. They're trapped. Desmond drops his bag, his cane forgotten, and limps into the smoke. The heat stings his eyes, but he finds 2 men near a collapsed tarp, dragging them to safety. The third, a woman named Ellie, is pinned under debris, her leg caught. He kneels beside her, his joints screaming, and lifts the beam just enough for her to crawl free. Go, now, he urges, his voice calm despite the crackling flames. Ellie staggers out, leaning on him, her eyes wide with gratitude. Jamal, who'd followed Desmond that night against his advice, watches from the shadows. Something shifts in him, a spark ignited by the old man's courage. He rushes forward, helping Desmond pull Ellie clear, his hands shaking but strong. A local reporter, Sarah Klein, driving home late, sees the fire and stops. Her camera captures Desmond and Jamal emerging from the smoke, carrying Ellie to safety. Sirens wail in the distance as fire trucks approach, their lights cutting through the night. Sarah approaches, her voice trembling with awe. "Mr. Doss." "What happened here, Desmond?" Coughing, waves her off. "Just did what needed doing," he says, his eyes on Jamal, who's helping Ellie sit. Jamal meets Desmond's gaze, his chest tight with something new: pride, purpose. He recognizes Ellie, a friend from the tracks who'd shared her food with him once. For the first time, he feels part of something bigger than survival. The fire dies under the firefighters' hoses, but the story is just beginning. Sarah's photos show Desmond, frail but fearless, and Jamal, a boy the town feared, saving lives side by side. She knows this is more than a fire. It's a truth the town needs to hear. Desmond leans on his cane, his breath ragged, but his heart steady. He looks at Jamal, a faint smile breaking through the soot on his face. "You did good, son," he says, and Jamal nods, his eyes shining. The night grows quiet, the overpass smoldering under the stars. Tomorrow, Sarah's story will hit the presses, and Lynchburg will face a reckoning. For now, Desmond and Jamal walk home, their bond forged in fire, ready for whatever comes next. The dawn breaks cold and clear over Lynchburg, Virginia, the smoldering remains of the overpass fire, now just a memory under the morning frost. Desmond Doss sits at his kitchen table, sipping coffee, while Jamal sleeps soundly on the cot, the events of last night still vivid in their minds. A newspaper lies folded on the counter, its headline waiting to change everything. Sarah Klein's article hits the stands by noon. The front page of the Lynchburg Ledger, bold and unmissable: "Hacksaw hero saves lives again." Her words weave Desmond's war heroics with his quiet acts of kindness, detailing how he pulled 3 people from a fire and gave a troubled boy a second chance. The photo of Desmond and Jamal, soot-streaked and resolute, stares out from the page. At the diner, Mrs. Carter reads the article, her coffee growing cold as her cheeks flush with shame. "We got it all wrong," she whispers to her friend, who nods, eyes fixed on the paper. The story spreads like wildfire, passed from hand to hand, reshaping the town's whispers into gasps of awe. Mr. Thompson, at the auto shop, sets the paper down, his voice gruff but shaken. "Desmond's been helping those folks all along, and we called him a fool." He shakes his head, the weight of his words settling heavy. By afternoon, the Ledger's website crashes from the flood of readers sharing Sarah's story. Social media buzzes with hashtags, "Rasher Hacksaw Hero," "Lynchburg Light," turning Desmond's quiet deeds into a beacon. Even the national news picks it up, with CNN calling for an interview. But Desmond, true to form, declines. At the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Reverend Hayes calls an urgent meeting, his voice trembling with resolve. "We owe Desmond an apology," he says to the council. "We judged him without knowing the truth." Mrs. Carter, her petition now a forgotten relic, stands before the group, her eyes red. "I was wrong to doubt him," she admits. "We need to make this right." The church plans a public gathering for Sunday, inviting Desmond to speak, a chance to honor the man they misunderstood. They reach out to Jamal too, hoping he'll share his story, though he hesitates, unsure if the town will accept him. Desmond nods at him across the table. "They'll listen. Son, if you speak from the heart." Sunday morning arrives, and the church is packed. Every pew filled with faces, some curious, some guilty, all eager to hear Desmond Doss. He stands at the pulpit, his cane steadying him, his voice soft but clear. "I never wanted praise," he begins, "just to do what's right, like I did on that ridge long ago." He tells of the war, of saving men under fire, and of the nights he spent leaving blankets for the forgotten. Folks down by the tracks ain't so different from those soldiers, he says. They just need someone to believe they're worth saving. Jamal steps forward, his hands nervous but his voice steady. I was lost, running with the wrong crowd, stealing to eat, he says. Mr. Doss didn't just save my life, he showed me I could be more than my mistakes. The congregation sits in stunned silence, some wiping tears, others nodding as Jamal's words sink in. Mrs. Carter, in the front row, clasps her hands, her earlier judgment replaced by quiet respect. Reverend Hayes closes the service with a prayer, his voice thick. Let us learn from Desmond's example and lift up those who've fallen. Outside the church, the community buzzes with a new energy, the article's impact rippling outward. Mr. Thompson approaches Desmond, his voice low. I'm sorry. Desmond, I'll bring some tools over for that boy of yours. Mrs. Larson, once the loudest critic, organizes a fundraiser at the diner, her face earnest. We're collecting for those folks by the tracks. She tells customers, Desmond showed us they're part of our town too. By Monday, when the fundraiser grows, with donations pouring in blankets, food, even money for a new shelter. The town council, spurred by Sarah's article, votes to convert an old warehouse into a community center for the homeless and at-risk youth. Ms. Harper, the social worker, steps in, her eyes bright. This will be a safe place for kids like Jamal, she says. Jamal, meanwhile, meets with Miss Harper at Desmond's house, his toolbox by his side. She offers him a spot in a vocational program for auto repair, funded by the town's new initiative. You've got talent, Jamal, she says, and now you've got a chance. He looks at Desmond, who nods, a proud smile creasing his weathered face. Told you. Son, fix something, and you fix yourself. Jamal grips the wrench in his hand, a promise to himself taking root. The community center takes shape over the weeks, its walls painted with donations from local businesses. Volunteers, including Mrs. Carter, serve hot meals, their aprons a far cry from their earlier petitions. The once shunned tracks become a place of hope, no longer the shame of the town. Sarah Klein visits Desmond to thank him, her notebook full of follow-up questions. You've changed Lynchburg, Mr. Doss, she says, her camera ready. Desmond shakes his head, his voice quiet. I just helped one boy. Sarah the town did the rest. Jamal starts his training program, his days now filled with engines and oil, his nights free of the track's cold. He writes a letter to Desmond, his handwriting shaky but sincere. You gave me a future, Mr. Doss. I won't waste it. Desmond reads the letter by lamplight, his Bible open beside him, a peace settling in his chest. He thinks of Hacksaw Ridge, of the men he carried to safety, and of Jamal. Another life pulled from the dark. His work, he knows, is never done, but it's enough for now. At the diner, Mr. Thompson shares the ledger with customers, pointing to Sarah's follow-up story. Desmond's always been a hero, he says, his voice proud. We just forgot for a while. Mrs. Carter, serving coffee, nods, her eyes soft. He didn't just save that boy, he saved us from our own blindness. The diner hums with agreement, the town's heart shifting toward compassion. The community center opens with a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and Jamal stands proudly beside Ms. Harper, his new mentor. Kids from the tracks wander in, their faces curious, some holding tools, others holding hope. Desmond watches from the back, his cane steady, his heart full. Reverend Hayes takes the stage, his voice carrying over the crowd. Desmond Doss reminded us that kindness is a choice, even when it's hard. He gestures to Desmond, who waves off the applause, his cheeks flushed. Jamal steps forward, his voice stronger now. Mr. Doss didn't just give me a toolbox, he gave me a reason to use it. The crowd cheers, and for the first time, Jamal feels like he belongs. Desmond slips out quietly, the winter air cool against his skin. He looks toward the tracks, where new lights glow from the center, a beacon in the darkness. He smiles, knowing one act of kindness has sparked a fire that will burn for years. The winter fades into spring in Lynchburg, Virginia, and the community center near the railroad tracks hums with life. Desmond Doss, now a quiet legend at 78, walks slowly past the center, his cane tapping the pavement. He pauses to watch kids laugh inside, their voices carrying hope where despair once reigned. Inside the center, Jamal, now 17, stands before a group of teens, his toolbox open on a table. He's a volunteer now, teaching them to fix bikes and radios, his hands steady with purpose. Mr. Doss gave me a chance. He tells them, his voice clear, "You've got one too." Desmond doesn't linger, slipping away before anyone notices. Fame has never suited him, and the town's newfound admiration sits heavy on his shoulders. He prefers his garden, his Bible, and the quiet of doing what's right without fanfare. At home, he finds a letter from Jamal tucked under his door, the handwriting neater than before. "Opened my own shop today, Mr. Doss," it reads. "Couldn't have done it without you." Desmond smiles, tucking the note into his Bible, a new bookmark for old promises. The town has changed, its heart softened by the truth of Desmond's deeds. The railroad tracks, once a place to avoid, now draw volunteers with food and blankets. Mrs. Carter, once his fiercest critic, leads a weekly drive, her voice warm. "We're making this place home for everyone," she says. Mr. Thompson, at the auto shop, hires Jamal part-time, impressed by the boy's skill with engines. "You're proof Desmond was right," he tells Jamal, clapping his shoulder. The shop buzzes with customers, many drawn by the story of the boy who rose from the tracks. The church rack, too, has shifted, its pews filled with faces eager to learn from Desmond's example. Reverend Hayes preaches about compassion, his sermons now quoting Desmond's words. "Kindness doesn't need a weapon," he says, and the congregation nods, their hearts open. One Sunday, the town unveils a small statue in the park, a bronze figure of Desmond holding a medical kit, his face etched with quiet resolve. The plaque reads, "Laughter doesn't need a weapon." Desmond, reluctant, attends the ceremony, his eyes fixed on the ground as applause rings out. He speaks briefly, his voice soft but steady. "I didn't do anything special," he says. "Just what the Lord put in front of me." The crowd hushes, moved by the humility of a man who's changed their town. Jamal stands nearby, his eyes bright with pride, no longer the scared boy from the tracks. He's enrolled in a trade school now, his days filled with carburetors and dreams of owning a bigger shop. He catches Desmond's eye and nods, a silent thank you for a life reclaimed. The community center thrives, its walls painted with murals of hope, hands reaching out, faces smiling. Ms. Harper, the social worker, oversees programs for kids like Jamal, her office filled with donated tools and books. "This is Desmond's legacy," she says, her voice warm. "He showed us what's possible." At the diner, Mrs. Larson serves coffee with a smile, her petition long forgotten. She keeps a copy of Sarah Klein's article framed on the wall, a reminder of the town's awakening. "We were blind," she tells a customer, "but Desmond helped us see." Sarah Klein, the reporter, writes a follow-up piece, her words reaching beyond Lynchburg. "Desmond Doss didn't just save lives in war," she writes. "He's saving them still, one act of kindness at a time." The story goes viral, inspiring donations from across the state. The center expands, adding a workshop where teens learn trades and a kitchen serving hot meals. Volunteers, young and old, fill the space, their laughter echoing where silence once lingered. The tracks, once a shadow, now glow with possibility, a testament to one man's faith. Desmond, back in his garden, kneels to plant new seeds, his hands steady despite the ache in his joints. He thinks of Hacksaw Ridge, of the men he carried, and of Jamal, another soul pulled from the dark. His work, he knows, is a ripple that keeps spreading. Jamal visits one evening, his new work boots scuffed with honest dirt. "Got my shop running, Mr. Doss," he says, his voice proud. "Named it Ridge Auto. After you." Desmond chuckles, shaking his head. "You don't need to name nothing after me, son. Just keep fixing things, cars, lives, whatever comes your way." Jamal grins, handing Desmond a small wrench keychain, a token of gratitude. "This is for you," he says, "for fixing me." Desmond takes it, his fingers closing around the cool metal, his heart full. The town council names the community center Doss Haven, a nod to the man who sparked its creation. At the opening, kids from the tracks perform a song, their voices raw but hopeful. Desmond watches from the back, his eyes misty, knowing this is the true victory. Mrs. Carter, now a regular volunteer, pulls Desmond aside, her voice soft. "I was wrong about you, and about Jamal." She says, "Thank you for showing us a better way." Desmond nods, his smile gentle. "We all get it wrong sometimes," he says. "What matters is what we do after." Nights in Lynchburg grow warmer, the stars bright above the tracks. Desmond sits in his armchair, his Bible open under a flickering lamp. He reads a verse about love, his lips moving silently, a prayer for the world he's touched. A knock at the door breaks the quiet Jamal, dropping off a photo of his shop, its sign glowing Ridge Auto. "Business is good," he says, his smile wide. "And I'm starting a program to teach kids like me." Desmond's eyes crinkle with pride, his voice low. "You're carrying the light now. Son, don't let it go out." The town, once divided, now gathers for barbecues at Doss Haven, where families from all walks share stories and laughter. The tracks, no longer a place of shame, are a bridge to connection, proof that kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. Sarah Klein's final article quotes Jamal, his words a beacon for others. "Mr. Doss didn't just save me. He showed me how to save others." The piece ends with a call to action, urging readers to find their own way to give. Desmond, unaware of the article, tends his garden as summer approaches, his hands deep in the earth. He thinks of the boy who's become like a son, of the town that's become a family. His heart, battered by war and time, feels light, knowing he's planted seeds that will grow. One evening, as fireflies dance in the dusk, Desmond sits on his porch, the wrench keychain in his pocket. He hears laughter from the community center, a sound that carries across the tracks. It's the sound of a town reborn, of lives mended, of a legacy that will outlive him. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.